I took pictures of my mom with pictures of her when she lived in El Salvador before she immigrated to the United States. And uh, she and my mom and my abuela, my grandmother, are women, and the stories of growing up in poverty and war, and were ones that really impacted me as a child, and also led me to create work that where I was wanted to connect to my heritage. I am biracial, so my dad is white. So growing up mostly in a white dominated world, I didn't really feel like there was a place where I could tell where other people had the same story as me, or I had a place to even like process and explore my identity as a biracial woman. So these pieces here, where I use elements called retablo and ex photo. So retablo literally means behind the altar, and in like Latinx, Chicanx art, um, uh, there is like a lot of art is using iconography through like Catholicism, and where it like tells a story, had references like a patron saint, and other like Latinx and Chicanx modern artists have taken elements of that and kind of created something new out of it. So I kind of did something similar where I was using aspects of my cultural folk art, and heritage to create something that was specific to me and my identity and my story. So this first series I did in 2016, a series called Identity de Retablos, that was on display at the Mestizo Institute of Culture and Arts. And they were images. These were big. So they're kind of like mini altars, where there's a photographic element, text, and found objects to kind of create this scene that is telling a story. And in my case, it is a way to explore and process my identity. Like with these, my identity starts and begins with my mother. So these, I did images kind of just like about her, like looking at these pictures where I know that was her, but I didn't recognize her. And with the images that I know now, like my mom in the kitchen preparing dinner. So that's what these first images are. Just me kind of exploring and processing the beginning of my story, and just some of these early images. And this is my abuela right here. And this is my abuela, my mom, and me together, our legacy. And so though I'll just show those and we can get right into, so I'll just stop this for a moment. So the images from this show have a very similar feel, but at the same time, there is very different, because it's about a different stage of my life and exploration, not only as an artist but as a woman, and as a woman of indigenous descent. So my grandmother, my abuela, through doing a DNA test, we found out that we have indigenous ancestry from the colonial land known as El Salvador, um, and uh, and my abuela was an orphan. Her mother died when she was very young, and she didn't know her father, so she was raised by her godmother, and didn't know anything about her family, other than her mother was a blonde white woman living in El Salvador, and she didn't even know her dad's name. And so through this DNA test, we are given this knowledge that her father was indigenous since her mother was white. and we're able to track down his name eventually. But other than that, like, the information ends there. Like, we don't have any other information. Like, I don't know what nation, language, uh, I don't know anything. And that's really common for, uh, unfortunately, a lot of people in Latin South America, that because of colonialism, because of war and poverty, because of things beyond our control, that we are cut off from our indigenous heritage. And so for several years, I was thinking, like, how, like, I wanted to have like concrete evidence. Like, I want to know my nation, I want to know what our language, our customs, I wanted to know all of that. But aside from having like this indigenous percentage in my DNA test, I had nothing to go off of. So it was like pretty much impossible. Like, literally trying to find something at the bottom of the ocean. So I these pieces. Oh, sorry, my studio has. And if I'm still for too long, it turns the light turns off. Um, so here, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so these images, they, looking to see how our, yeah, gallery tour is not uploaded yet. But these images, the images that you're seeing are physical objects that are on display in the gallery currently, and they're similar to the other pieces I showed you, but these are more specific. Like, there I was kind of like exploring. I felt like I couldn't really claim my identity as even uh, a Latina woman, because being biracial, not having the best Spanish, like, so that was kind of what the first body of work was about, and then this work was about me like really exploring and wanting to connect to my indigenous heritage. And this piece in particular, um, is kind of like, so the pieces in the exhibition really follow like a it's like a poetic visual narrative where they start with one piece and then go along the wall and then end with one, and then there's an installation, which I'll show you a picture of in a minute. And most of the retablo altars you see here have a text that accompany them. And so when I was in grad school a couple years ago, I was able to go to Guatemala, and um, and I had never been to Central America before. So this was my first time ever really going to the land where my ancestors came from. And it was a very meaningful and pretty difficult trip for me, not only because being in a different place and driving on roads that weren't always there, but I actually experienced a lot of racism on the trip, which was very unfortunate. But those experiences um, led me to become the artist and advocate that I am today. And a lot of that is really the heart and soul of this series. And I can read this text to you all, because I feel like it does a good job in kind of uh, setting the scene for the exhibition. So, our ancestors lived in cycles, leaving their homes and sacred spaces when it was time for the earth to reclaim it again. I never knew who they were. Uh, forces beyond my control took away anything I might hold on to. I stand here and see how people trim back the grass for the tourists, but I never would have seen them if they hadn't. And this image is one where we were able to visit like one of the sites where there are all these like temples or buildings that where that the land was trying to like grow over and reclaim it, but that people were keeping everything neat and organized so the tourists could come in and see how the Mayan people used to live. And for me, I was really grateful to be able to see them, but also feeling sadness that the earth couldn't reclaim this structure like the original people of the land had intended for it. And so that's um, yeah. And then so with these pieces, like as going back to uh, retablos and how has a root in Catholicism, how this really creating each one of these boxes was a very healing experience for me. How I was, it was almost like I kind of even view these as like a prayer or a ritual, creating each one of these as creating a part, as I was illustrating a part of my journey. And here, and I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen really quick because, and I apologize for having my images all over the place. I was really counting on that gallery tour um, working out, but I will, let me just share this one with you all really quick. Okay, so this image right here, so this is actually the retablo that starts off the show, and it's called Your Dream. And so this show, and this piece right here is kind of the bridge from the previous show that I did in 2016 to this body of work now, where it has, this is a picture of me and my mom um, when I was a little girl, and the text here, here, and I'll read it out loud. And sometimes I can't read my handwriting, so, but I'll do my best. Okay. I was always your dream. I wanted you to have your own life, but you just wanted me to have mine, where I could do anything, where no one would stop me. You lit the candles, said your prayers, and traveled all this way so that I could be born in a land of freedom. You bore me on the inside of your heart, and I grew in your light, seeing the world through the inside of your heart. I called to our ancestors to be with me as I began to search for them in the dark, holding the light you gave me, holding your hand as I travel back to where we begin. And so this piece is, it really is a love letter to my mother, but it also is where my journey really begins. Before, it was me like really trying to process and understand and kind of, I guess, process my identity as someone who is biracial and living in two worlds all the time. And so my mother, her relationship with our indigenous heritage is something that's very different for her. Like, she has no desire to go back to where she was born, and she is, because of all the trauma that she experienced living through the war, like, she wants to stay here. She wants uh, she wants us to be safe. She doesn't want me to go down there, but I have this desire to reach back, and I think that's something she wasn't expecting as a mother of, I guess she would be first generation American, and I'm second. So I don't think she really expected that her daughter would be wanting to reach back to where we began. So that's, I guess, so that's kind of like a split in our journey. Like, I needed to go my way, and she was her way. Here, I'll stop this one moment and then pull the other image up. Sorry, I have all these screens up. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'm trying to see where that image went that I'm sharing. Sorry about this. Here, I'll stop sharing one more time. I'm still editing these photos, so that's why everything's kind of in a different place. So I appreciate your patience as I bounce back and forth with these. Okay. Okay, here we go. So, um, here's the gallery space, and here's the installation that I'll show you in a moment. We'll go. Okay, so the other pieces. So let's see, and this is actually a piece that I use that was a part of my previous exhibition, and I decided to reuse it to like recreate it for this exhibition, and for me, like, this was how I started, how I guess how, even though I was going on this journey and my abuela had passed away without going on this journey at all for herself, and my mother not really wanting to go on this journey in the same way I did, that so the little piece of paper that's here says, I cry for you, I cry for me, I cry for all of us. And realizing that by going on this journey of exploring my indigenous heritage and my ancestry, that I was going on this journey and carrying all of them with me, even if they weren't physically, or even if they weren't physically with me, that they were in spirit with me. And okay, and then I also through this journey, so a lot of indigenous artists and culture with the women in these indigenous communities in Central and South America, and pretty much throughout all of the world, textile and weaving is a huge like part of the art and like clothing, and so that was something I felt really connected to, and I started to teach myself how to weave a year ago, and and this isn't like exactly a weaving, and it's definitely very different from what my indigenous ancestors would have created, but I have like little elements like this throughout the show where like textiles make an appearance, and also are like part of telling the story, and so that's this image here, and also another one. And through this exhibition, I have like, and all of these the retablo altars, I have there's all kinds of objects in them, and in particular there are bones, varying deer bones, raven bones, and so I did an artist residency in Iceland in 2015, and when I was there, I created a body of work and I incorporated raven bones into that, and so I created like a mobile that was a part of that exhibition when I got home, and so I've held on to these bones ever since, and it just felt appropriate for me to, as this is like me like processing the past few years and kind of the end of a cycle, that these bones make an appearance again. So throughout the images you'll see these bones that have writing on them, that so it's like and that's where also the narrative comes in, where each piece like in a certain order is like telling this story about this journey of my life in the past few years, and not and it makes it a very intimate experience when you're looking at these boxes as well. And a theme throughout the exhibition is salt and fire. There's a lot of candles, a lot of matches, a lot of things that relate to this like this ritual, this ceremony, and in a place for me, for those who are in Utah, and are familiar with the Great Salt Lake and the Salt Flats. So these are places in particular that are very sacred to me. They're places where that kind of symbolized, I don't know, like these are places that are kind of strange, can be disregarded, but are just like really eerily beautiful and um, and really healing places. And I feel like these places are an extension of me and a place that I can go to connect with myself and in turn connect with my ancestors, who I believe not only live within me but are all around me and in the world around me. And so like this is actually here. This is salt from the Salt Flats, and there's also a theme of butterflies throughout the exhibition, which, you know, themes of metamorphosis also connect in with the dreamers. And um, yeah, but really the theme of metamorphosis really makes the most sense here. So, or I guess the most connection here. So, and with this retablo, I wrote here, I am my own ceremony. De fuego de sol. De Sol. Can't. Yeah, I thought that was an over second. And de fuego de sal. Y sal means of fire and salt. So and something another thing I wanted to mention is I my Spanish is also pretty broken, and that is something that like those who I don't know, like a lot of Latinos are very proud of the Spanish language, and that's something that I've struggled with my own culture identity because my Spanish is very broken, um, and am not the best at communicating and understanding everything, but also realizing and that Spanish is the language of the colonizer. Like all of Central and South America, they speak Spanish because Spain came over and colonized those countries. So, um, but as we go through the exhibition, like I start everything mostly in English, and then there's a little bit of Spanglish as that pieces continue onward. And then by the end of the show, I use some words in Lenca. And the Lenca are one of the indigenous peoples of El Salvador. And even though, like I mentioned before, I don't know exactly what my nation, my language, my people's name is, I, through this process of just like meditation and trying to connect to my ancestors, I felt this really strong connection to the Lenca people, and um, I felt like that maybe that's who I am. Like I don't have that proof or evidence, but I felt this connection to that, so I incorporated words in Lenca in my titles. So this one is called Kopi Kopi, and Kopi Kopi means butterfly in Lenca. And this piece, the writing here says, "I'm a sacred vessel attending the wake of my awakening." And I was so my therapist came to see the exhibition, and I was telling her when she came, I said I should have put a big sign at the bottom said sponsored by my therapist, because my therapist was a huge part in my journey in creating these pieces, just helping to process like my fears and anxieties, because this was something that was so personal to me that I wanted to make sure that I did it right. And that I was doing everything I could to create the body of work that I wanted. And one thing that she said to me in one of our sessions, she said, you know, this body of work really is the wake of your awakening. And I really love that phrase because, like, awake, for those who aren't familiar, is um, where, like, it's kind of like a funeral, but the body of the person who has passed away is in their home, and people come to visit and bring offerings. It's something that's really common in parts of Europe and Ireland and Scotland. And I don't know. So it just felt like this exhibition, this show really was awake, because this is a previous version of myself that, like, I definitely became a different person through creating this body of work, and processing um, my traumas and things that had happened to me, and in turn, like, realizing that I could just let go of these expectations and feeling like I needed to have this, like, concrete evidence I could hold in my hand and just, like, let myself be, and see that and realize that I create my own indigenous identity through uh, living my own life and connecting to my own spirituality, and that being an indigenous person is not something that someone else can define for you. That is something that you define and explore for yourself. And so that's what the show is, the wake of my awakening. So this piece here is called Waralem, which means riverbed in Lenka. And like I mentioned before, like, having experienced racism and microaggressions and gaslighting for not only being a person of color but a woman, and, like, I carried a lot of trauma in my body, and that and this piece is really about, like, how I'm starting to let that go, like how I had so, like, the text here, I can paraphrase it. Let's see how we're doing on time. That I felt like I had built, because of all the things that happened to me, that I had to be the strong person all the time, and that I didn't really have any place that I could really talk to anyone about my experiences. That I built, like, I felt like I had built a wall of stone around my heart, and um, and how now I am taking down those stones and I'm creating a riverbed, like a place for water and life to nourish my roots, and to become a new person. And when you see the exhibition in person, like, each of the pieces kind of, like, they kind of have, like, a phase or transition, where the first part is, like, me kind of figuring things out and maybe feeling a little insecure, and then, like, maybe feeling a little bit more confident, or, like, okay, like, I just need to trust myself, need to let go. And then, like, by this point in the exhibition, like, the boxes become a little bit more complex, and there's more text, and it's more like a little inner monologue that you're viewing. um, so I wish that I could show you all that. Looks like this video finally uploaded, but I don't know if we're past the point for me to show that to you, so we'll just leave that for later. So next piece, oh, here, first I want to show you this one. So this piece here, I had started writing a memoir about, like, my family, about my the women in my family, and this legacy that I came from. And I use excerpts of that work in progress within some of these last pieces. And this one in particular, this piece is called our my abuelas, my grandmothers. And in this text, I'll read this here really quick for you. She came to me in a dream Instead, it is time to create. The time, the time to move, to feel is now. I've waited forever, it feels, to hear her voice, the voice of spirits whose wombs I came from. Um, Sorry, I have a hard time reading that. One I know now how to listen. And uh, with, and I guess I'll tie back to the title of the exhibition is Roots of My Soul, uh, or Raíces de mi alma, and then eni-k una. So, Roots of My Soul and Raíces de mi alma mean, so this Raíces de mi alma is Roots of My Soul in Spanish, and I originally wanted to find what that translation was in Lenca to be a part of that exhibition title, but because Lenca is a language that not a lot of people speak anymore, there isn't a Google Translate for it. I wasn't able to put that translation in there, but I was able to find a linguist document, and there was this phrase eni-k una, which means I'm listening. And that really feels like the thesis, the of my show, of this exhibition, of this journey, that I don't know all the information. I'm not gonna have it the way that I want. I thought I could, or thought I wanted to have, but that I am listening to my ancestors. I am listening to my body. I am listening to what my soul needs, and that is enough. And uh, I don't need to push myself to be anything that I'm not, or feel like I have to fit into these boxes. Like, all that it matters is that I'm listening. And um, and uh, and I know in our world today there are different like views on like spirituality, um, but for me, like, I believe that my ancestors are with me, and not only like live in my body, but are in the world around me, and are spirit guides for me. And so by, I don't know, just like, and that's also an indigenous belief as well, that your ancestors are also not only in your past, but your present as well. Like, I am an ancestor for uh, someone in my lineage, which is a really beautiful idea. And the next piece. So this piece right here, the second to last piece in the exhibition. So I had a dream uh, a few years ago, and when I was preparing for this exhibition, I was looking through uh, like one of my notebooks, and I found this dream that I had written down, and it ended up, and I was like, wow, like this actually like really connects really well with this, and with what I'm exploring right now. And there's there's kind of a phrase, or something I've heard um, just through like doing this personal work and journey, that like we are our ancestors' greatest dream. And this dream I have here, I'll paraphrase it, so because I know we're getting a little short on time. But I had this dream where this woman, like, was offered an orange, ate it, and she swallowed one of the seeds and became pregnant. And and then the ocean took her baby from her. And I read this, and I was like, wow, I can't even believe I had this dream. Like it, and I still, like, once I started reading it, like, I remembered the imagery in my head. But just the idea that, like, how temporally, physically, I am disconnected from my ancestors, and like I like almost viewed the baby in this dream to be like my grandmother, my abuela, because that was the moment we were disconnected, was she was disconnected from her mother and her father, and didn't know who she was, um, but that her mother was still like searching for her um, somewhere out there. So I don't know, like there's kind of a lot of complex thoughts to kind of include, like try to share virtually as well. But that's kind of what went into this piece. And this last piece is uh, is really I don't know. It's really like a celebration. It's a celebration. It's a letting go, and it's a beginning of a new chapter. Um, how I went on this journey and became a different person and let go of previous versions of myself. And now I am walking into a new version of myself, a new world, a new light. And I look at my life today and it is very different even from a year ago, where like I'm creating, helping to create spaces for other women, femmes, non-binary persons of color, just BIPOC people in general, where I want to make sure that no one has the same experience as me growing up and not having a place where they see themselves, where they can process their story, and um, have a place where where they can talk and share and process with people who have similar unshared experiences, and that is my legacy that I'm creating and will continue to create. Um, just like how as I went on this journey too, that my community became in some ways smaller, but at the same time like even more like intimate and beautiful, and uh, where everyone in my life like connects. We all connect on this journey together, even though this is my individual journey. Um, that this is a journey that I share with others, and others are on their own parallel journeys with me to discover who they are and connect to their ancestors and indigenous ancestry. Um, and then I'll show you where to go. So when you go into the exhibition, here's the title that I mentioned earlier, and these are these tapestries I created. And this is created with a photographic process called cyanotypes. Cyanotype, which is how they used to make blueprints back in the day. And it's a light sensitive chemical that the UV light from the sun exposes the image. And this is a combination of negatives, images from my exhibition, and found objects, mostly plants and feathers, things like that. And like my ancestors created tapestries and weavings, this was me doing my own version of that. Um, and this piece is called Past, Present, and Future. And some, and it really reflects how, I guess this piece is really symbolic and representative of uh, the journey I've been on the few years, but also how some things are in focus, some things are faded, and it's all like existing and living at once. And how beautiful is that? And it's funny. I actually went into this piece like really wanting to explore like the concept of like mycelium, which is like a root system with fungus and plants, and but I kept just being drawn to the salt, and I'm like, no, I guess the mycelium will come in another time. But the images here are of like the cracks of the salt, the water. This piece in the middle right here is the water at one of the places in the salt flats, and the texture of the salt. um, and salt is a symbol of just like preservation and healing, uh, and ritual. So it just, yeah, it's this piece really surprised me the most because it was, with the boxes I kind of knew what I was planning for each one, but with these, like, it kind of just turned into its own thing. And where and I think it does a really good job of like reflecting like this concept of all of these different um, things and images, like or memories or past memories or things happening in the future, like all really just interconnected and happening all at once. And um, yeah, and I wish with this like I with art sometimes it's like, oh, like I shouldn't get too close, but with these like I actually really loved it when people walked through it when I saw it in person, because it was almost like walking. I don't know. Some people said it felt like walking through water in a way, and I really like that. And I think that's like, I don't know, it's really healing as well, just to hear like, even if people are seeing this exhibition, maybe they don't have the same story or it's like completely opposite of mine, that there is still a way that people can connect. And I think that's really beautiful to hear that. So um, and I see we have 10 minutes left. So I yeah, so I guess I can just wrap up there. And I appreciate everyone's patience as my little gallery tour didn't pan out as planned, as I was and then getting pictures from my computer. But I'm really glad that I was able to share these images of my exhibition with you all. And yeah, just thank you so much for just listening and witnessing my story today. So thank you so much. And I'll stop sharing. And does anyone have any questions or comments? You can just feel free to unmute yourself. And if you'd like to turn on your video, I'd love to see um, your face while you're talking, but I understand if you're not able to or not comfortable. But yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. I saw your comment in the chat.
Uh, Sarah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Sorry.
yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. It's a beautiful exhibit. I think it was really moving for me to hear you talk about that sense of separation and loss, um, and connected to me, not in the sense that I've had the same experience as you have, but in the sense that I recognize that feeling of wanting to connect to the people who've come before you, but whether because of circumstances or emotional distance, just feeling like you are trying to build a bridge, right?
Yeah.
Back in time. You're trying to connect to something that's already happened that you
Mhm.
feel you've been separated from. And that was really wonderful.
Thank you.
Um, I well, I was gonna ask a different question, but I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about, if you feel comfortable, talking about your experiences with that meditation and mindfulness, and what you felt like it was that helped get you into a space mentally where you could listen, like you're talking about.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your comment and your question. I love that, and I think that's a wonderful question. It's one I'm always thinking about as well. And I think for me, getting into that space was one, being out in nature is a huge thing. And like my sacred places I mentioned, Great Salt Lake, Salt Flats, Antelope Island are definitely some of those places are also connected to salt, which, yeah, is funny as well. But I think the other major thing was like I'm trying to think the best way to word this. And that's one thing I love about artwork is it put things into words that I don't really know how to do. But I think the main thing is I'm just trying to like decolonize like my mind and my experience, just not only as a woman of color, but just as a human being living in this world where um, I have lived in this white world for so long where like I I don't know, just like indigenous history isn't really like taught. Like when I was growing up, like, you know, we learned about like the pilgrims and Indians, how they were like friends and helped each other, and it's like that wasn't true. And how I've really had to like go out of my way and like seek out that knowledge. And so I think that like having that mindset, like I'm gonna like seek out and having like conversations, I think like I when I've definitely had conversations with people who didn't understand, and that was painful and hard. But as I like connected with different people on different parts of my journey, it's like, okay, I can have this conversation with this person. It's safe and they understand, and it like helps us both learn and grow. But yeah, I think that's kind of the closest I can get to answering the question. I think I think it really, and I think also therapy was a huge part of it for me. Like I'm a huge like advocate for therapy. And I think it's just helpful for us all to have someone outside of our experience and our world like act and our journeys like act as a guide or like a mediator. Just be like, oh, what if have you thought about this way, or um, like you're doing this in this way and it's wonderful. I don't know. So um, and a type of therapy I do as well is actually I do energy. Do like energy sessions as well, and that's been like really like impactful for me. So I think um yeah, like I've connected with like different like healers throughout different denominations and uh practices. So that's something that's also a huge part of my work as well. Like I have like I don't have like a ton of crystals, but I do have like there are some like stones that make like an appearance in the show, and also like sage and palo santo, which are things that are like part of my indigenous culture and cultural heritage. So um yeah, I think it's like a mixture of all of that. So I don't know if I really answered your question, but that's kind of, yeah, just some thoughts I had with that.
It did. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And sorry, I was wondering about the jars that you incorporated. Is there
Mm-hmm.
a specific um, spiritual tradition that you're drawing from when you have those jars of the dried herbs or flowers
Mm-hmm.
in the retablos?
I think I'm trying to think. I actually haven't really thought about the containers that much. Like, I think how I grew up, like we always had like jars to hold like herbs and spices and different things, and I think I just really love that aesthetic. And also it's I think it's also like a preservation as well, like when you can, and it can be like compared even to like canning, which is something we did as well, where it's like, and I'm also a collector as well, like all the objects you see in my exhibition are like things I collected, like here I'm sitting here in my studio and I have like this hornet hive, I have like some stones that I found, like that I gathered, I have like candles, rose petals. Like I I've just been always a collector, just like finding things that kind of are part of that experience. And it's and also being someone who moved a lot when I was little, that's something I kept to like hold on to like different places I had lived. And I think um yeah, I think it's kind of just like preservation and collection is kind of the closest I can think to like those jars. Like um yeah, no, but that's I'm gonna think about that. I really, yeah, I that's something I want to think about more, just like what those jars mean to me. I feel like that's something I need to process. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I actually have a question. My name's Michelle, and yeah, just beautiful work. It was very touching to me.
Thank you.
Um, so my question is, um, well, I guess a little backup first. I am an architect and an artist, And I have been thinking a lot lately architecturally about social equity. Um, and lately I have been looking at art as a tool to make connections. And sorry, I just ran up the stairs, so I'm out of breath.
Good.
But um, art as a tool for increasing social justice and equity and connections. And I'm wondering, your work is so personal, but I see it as a powerful tool for communication with social equity. I'm just wondering I'm wondering if that was something that was at the forefront of your mind as you were working, or if it was more of a personal process that maybe I'm reading, or I'm seeing those aspects of it myself, since it's something that is of importance to me, and I'm thinking about that, so I'm recognizing that in your work.
No, thank you so much for the comment, for the question. And um, I feel like it's a little bit of both. It was definitely like I wanted to be able to reflect the journey I was on through these pieces, but I am also thinking of, you know, racial equity, social equity as well, like being an advocate for our BIPOC communities here in Utah. Um, and I think for me, like, I just want to be able to highlight other stories like mine. And I feel like just in our society and culture, like especially in Utah, this is a very white state. Um, that also has like a very like dominant narrative that accompanies that, and I feel um, like, and there's this wonderful TED talk. I can't remember the person's name, but she's a writer from uh, Africa, Nigeria, I think, and um, there's this TED talk talking about the danger of one story, and I think just having equity not only in the arts but in society is just making sure that there's space for multiple stories to be told, that there isn't just one narrative that where people, and that's where like assumptions and stereotypes come from, where like for example the feisty Latina, the mad black woman, come from these one narratives, but it's like there's so many different narratives to different groups of people and different cultures, um, and I I think work like mine is something that is growing as like more people are wanting to connect to their ancestors and their heritage. And yeah, I think yeah, just making spaces for multiple stories and narratives to be told and shared, and like you were saying, like even, and Jesse was saying as well, even if you don't have that same story, it's like you still connect with parts of that, and that's where empathy begins, um and can be cultivated. So yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate your comment and perspective.
Thank you.
All right, does anyone else have any questions or comments or feedback? All right. Well, no worries. I just appreciate you all listening, and just, yeah, just being present in whatever way you could today. Yeah, I really appreciate it, and I'm glad I was able to share a little bit of my work and my story with all of you all today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We appreciate you doing this wonderful artist talk. We appreciate your work and your partnership with BDAC, and we wish you all the best.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody.